body of work, walking right past them that don't care.
Good morning. I'm Congressman Raul Ruiz, and I represent California's 36th Congressional District. I'm also an emergency medicine physician, public health expert, and founder and co-chair of the Congressional Bipartisan Burn Pits Caucus. First, I want to thank Danielle, Angela, and all the veterans and their families with us. Thank you for your service to our nation, and thank you for your strength in telling your stories. You are the reason why we're here today. I'd also like to thank John Stewart and John Field for your advocacy and commitment to the cause, Rosie Torres for your incredible work, and whom I've had the honor to have in my district back in 2018, educating the veterans in my district about burn pits at my Veterans University. I'd like to thank Secretary Shulkin for your years of service and for joining us here today, and of course, Senator Gillibrand for your partnership in this fight. I stand before you today because of the bravery and sacrifice of Jennifer Kepner, a constituent of mine who was exposed to burn pits during her service at Balad Air Force Base in Iraq. Jennifer Kepner was 39 years old, a mother of two who served our nation as an Air Force medic. She was one of the most inspiring and brave people I have ever met. When I met Jennifer, we sat at her kitchen table. And let me tell you, it was one of the most impactful kitchen table conversations I've had in my life. And she told me about her life, about her service, about her husband, Ben Kepner, and their two young children, Adia and Wyatt, whom she loved dearly. And she told me about her military service in Balad, Iraq, where she was exposed to one of the largest burn pits, up to 10 acres, where they burned batteries, jet fuel, medical waste, and much, much more, releasing large plumes of black smoke and causing her and her fellow soldiers to inhale toxic chemicals, carcinogens, and particulate matter. When we spoke, Jennifer was battling pancreatic cancer, a diagnosis her doctor linked to her exposure to burn pits during her service overseas. By the time I met Jennifer, she had only months to live, and Jennifer spent her final days as a leading voice for her fellow veterans exposed to burn pits, even in the midst of her own unimaginable suffering. I was at her bedside with her family when she died on October 18th, 2017. And through it all, Jennifer had only two requests, only two dying requests, dying wishes. One, to make sure her family was taken care of. And two, to make sure that other veterans are protected and their families from the pain and suffering that she experienced, not only from burn pits, but also from her difficult experience navigating the VA after being denied. It is for Jennifer. It is for Leroy, Rosie's husband, for Heath, Danielle's husband, for Angela and her husband, and many others that we fight to fulfill Jennifer's wishes. Fueled by stories like Jennifer and countless others, I've developed a comprehensive four-pronged public health approach to address burn pits. By one, ending the use of burn pits once and for all. Two, educating doctors and veterans on the health effects of burn pit exposure to identify risks and early symptoms. Three, taking care of our veterans and their families with medical care and disability benefits. And four, continuing the needed research to fully understand the scope of danger associated with burn pit and other toxic exposures. Stories like Jennifer, Danielle's, and countless other veterans have been my inspiration for legislation such as the Jennifer Kepner Hope Act. And they are the reason why I created the bipartisan, bicameral Congressional Burn Pits Caucus in 2018. Service members are returning home from the battlefield only to become delayed casualties of war, dying years later from lung diseases, cancers, respiratory illnesses, autoimmune diseases caused by their exposure to burn pits and other toxins. drawing parallels with Agent Orange and 9/11 exposures. In fact, Jennifer told me that this indeed is the Agent Orange of our generation. The DOD and the VA must acknowledge the lethal dangers of this self-inflicted crisis and address the suffering of exposed veterans. Look, I'm an emergency medicine physician and public health expert, and in public health and in medicine, it is practice that if there is a high enough suspicion of a harm that causes a severe enough consequence, then we need to act on that suspicion. We have evidence that give us a high enough suspicion. Carcinogens on the dust, metals in lung biopsies that have been proven. And it is a severe enough consequence. Men and women dying left and right in their young, healthy years with no other risk factors are dying from cancers, lung diseases, and other severe illnesses. So we need to remove the harm and treat the person. Our veterans cannot afford to wait decades for that perfect 20-year longitudinal double cohort study like they were forced to with Agent Orange. People are dying. And that's why we're here today, to ensure the VA and DOD cannot neglect this DOD self-inflicted wound any longer. This is about taking care of our heroes in uniform and saving veterans' lives. The Presumptive Benefits for War Fighters Exposed to Burn Pits and Other Toxins Act of 2020 would do just that by establishing the presumption of service connection necessary for veterans who develop respiratory diseases and cancers from toxic exposure. And the bill would direct the Secretary of the VA to work with the national academies to study a link between toxic exposures and additional diseases. So today, we're closer than ever to realizing Jennifer's vision of getting veterans the health care they've earned and deserve. Closer than ever to seeing the fulfillment of Leroy and Rosie's and Heath and Danielle's and Angela's dream of a just society that really respects those war fighters. As Jon Stewart says, when they come home, we give them the respect that they're due and the appreciation that they're due by taking care of them when they get illness from burn pit and other toxic exposures. But better than that, let's just end those exposures to begin with. So I look forward to continuing our work to get this bill signed into law and taking care of our heroes. And once again, thank you, Jon Stewart, John Fiel, Rosie Torres, Secretary Shulkin, Senator Gillibrand, Danielle, Angela, and all the veterans that are here today. I will now turn it back over to Jon Stewart for questions.